Hello and welcome to today's webcast from Range 4. Today we're talking about where is mobile in your DevOps toolchain. Our guest speaker today is Jonathan Marshall of IBM. If you have any questions and answers, please ask them at the end. And for now, I'll pass over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Helen. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak about this. I should probably explain my perspective on this. Part of the pre-sales team for IBM, working with our Worklight technology. So I help people understand and build out mobile applications. So I'm just going to talk through some of the challenges that we're seeing in this space and bring a perspective on how we're doing mobile, particularly then from a DevOps perspective on that. So moving through the first slide, the number of challenges that we find in this space are starting from the top left, fragmentation of the marketplace. Probably not too much of a surprise there, but it's a big question as to which platforms you or how many platforms you actually support developing applications for. So Android and Apple probably given, but even there, the fragmentation within Android and also the growing number of different form factors, even with Apple now as well. There's a big challenge as to how we're going to cover all of those, and then Windows Phone and maybe BlackBerry as well, and who knows in the future with the likes of Firefox and so forth. And into that world, we have the expectation, you see the top right, where 85% of users are actually expecting a better experience on mobile than they are on their desktop, which is far more powerful, which is interesting. So the whole expectation of just simplicity, rich engagement, very, very much higher on the mobile device. Moving around the life cycle there, we also got the question mark around security, the obviously recent high-profile challenges in that space, and mobile doesn't help us with this, with things like malware and also data on devices and all those kind of things. And it's into that world where we are also trying to speed up our development. We're trying to speed up the number of releases, the amount of features, and just our time to getting features available into the marketplace. And it's that speed that I guess I'll be focusing on primarily as we walk through this. The picture in the middle is what we call our software development lifecycle for mobile, and those features and facets of that lifecycle are we're going to go through fairly quickly today. So when we're looking at mobile applications, we are obviously talking about design and development, the thing you can see, the actual functionality in the application, but we're also looking at instrumentation. How do we know what's going on inside the application? We're looking at integration. We want to do real work with our applications, engage with existing enterprise data systems in a secure manner. We want to be able to test, and we want to know that what we're putting out is good quality. We want to scan and certify. We want to know that what we're putting out there is robust, can't be hacked. We want to deploy it, obviously, through app centers, but also once the applications are out there, we want to retain some control, some management over those, and finally obtain some insight. How are our applications being used? How are they performing? And those kind of questions. And it's that life cycle that people are aiming for. Should we say a 2-week life cycle is the most aggressive I'm aware of, where we're able to get features out very, very quick. And DevOps is the platform onto which we are able to do that. So you see an abridged version of a DevOps flow there, from build through to test and deployment, testing, and then delivery release it as well. So moving through that, some thoughts I was going to bring on the design and development facets. So first of all, as I said, I'm kind of approaching this from a Worklight perspective. Wherelite provides a mobile application platform, and recently we've grown that with application scanning and quality assurance. Worklight is a product. The green boxes at the bottom, it covers the studio, which is obviously the development side of things, but it also then manages the deployment aspects with the application center management with a console, integration through a server component, so that will be something that sits either in the cloud or in the data center, and then the runtime, the thing that actually enables the applications on the devices, and introduce the term cross-platform at this point as well, which is something that's quite interesting. So that's Wherelite, and as I say, that platform's been growing with a couple of additional products recently. Application scanning, so detecting code vulnerabilities at the time of development. Again, you're trying to do that as soon as you can in the development lifecycle. And quality assurance as well, whether that's sentiment analysis or actually some manual user testing out in the field as well. And I'll put those two into perspective later on. But in terms of development, consider cross-platform. I put this out because, again, we're in a world that's driving speed. We're wanting to get quality out there as soon as we can. And cross-platform really is coming of age, and this is something we spend a lot of our time doing now. So we're looking at techniques such as responsive web design, but really the benefits behind that are actually that we're based on standards. So HTML5, which has been maturing of recent years, CSS3 and JavaScript. And I have to say, it's not just the standards behind that, but actually the technologies, the mobile technologies and the power in those are really allowing those to be used with some very, very rich user experiences now. In terms of Wherelite, we're based on Apache Cordova, so that provides a JavaScript bridge to the native target environment. So you can see some examples on the right, iOS, Android and Windows Phone. And then we use terms like progressive enhancement. So we're not taking a desktop application and trying to shrink it onto a phone or tablet. That often doesn't work so well with just the complexity and the number of features that we would put onto a large browser application. But rather, progressive enhancement is starting at the other end, looking at your phones and your tablets, starting with simple user journeys through that. But then we're able to go and run that in the context of desktop applications as well. They scale up very, very well. And again, in terms of standards, we would endorse the use of a JavaScript framework that would allow you to do cross-platform delivery of user interface components and all those kind of things. So whether it's Dojo, jQuery, Sencha, or others, whether you want to use Angular, Backbone, whether you want to use Ionic, whatever else is out there, that certainly would work with Worklight. And I guess from our point of view is just to make sure that you back one of those that has got great community engagement with it. Certainly that's why we're as IBM contributors to Dojo and jQuery, because there's a great community effort behind that as well. And then as soon as you write your application in HTML5, JavaScript, you've got the ability to reuse core logic, integration, security, and even some of the look and feel as well. So very, very compelling to be able to write an application fundamentally once. But we do work in a world which is fragmented. It's fragmented in terms of technology, but in terms of user experience as well. Whether it's the simple things like a back button on Android, Worklight will allow you to optimize specific platforms for those specific user experience journeys as well, which is great. So it allows you to tailor the application on a platform-specific basis without losing the common shared and reusable artifacts of the code. And just to give you a feel for how we're doing that, this is a screenshot of the WhereLife Studio. So we were able to put our application in the highlighted section there, the common folder. Again, you can see HTML, artifacts, JavaScript, CSS. And then you would create a number of target environments. So again, on the example, you can see Android, BlackBerry, iPad, iPhone, Windows Phone on there as well. And we could do even Windows Desktop as well if you need to do that kind of thing. And that's where you can tailor, again, in the example, the iPhone could have some iPhone-specific CSS in there, and that would override what is in the common folder. So we're looking at being able to speed up development by writing the core logic once and then tailor it where appropriate in the specific folders for the operating systems. But we're not just, from a Wherelite point of view, sitting within the world of HTML5. We can use a number of different technologies. We can also work with native. This is a fairly busy slide, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. But hybrid, which is the idea of building your application in JavaScript and HTML5, but wrapping it up in an Apache Cordova shell, sits in the heart of what we're doing. But we've seen some real benefits to using that core code base to go and provide a mobile site as well. So whether you're doing commerce and you want a mobile web as well as a mobile application, that's all possible. And it's really a spectrum then from wanting something that's mobile web to starting to want to use some device engagement capabilities, whether it's GPS and camera. All that can be done with HTML5. But we are seeing people wanting to bring in some native components as well. Some people want to stay purely native where they have the skills in place. Some people are wanting to have some native for some really high-end user experiences, or some complex integration which isn't available in hybrid yet, like near-field communication and those kind of things. And so from a Wherelite point of view, we can mix and match these where appropriate. So where we can, we'll use cross-platform technologies, benefit from that across different handsets, but where appropriate, we can start mixing and matching some native. So again, just to give you a good example, there may be a custom log-on screen with a swipe or something like that could be done in native and added into a hybrid application. So having done that, having done our hybrid application development, we obviously want to test early, and from a Wherelite point of view, that's using the mobile browser simulator. And that's being able to test the functionality, general look and feel of the application without going into the specifics of an iOS SDK or an Android SDK. So we can check the functionality works, we can check it with different form factors. And again, because we're sitting in the world of Apache Cordova, which is a JavaScript world, we've provided simulator points for things like the compass you can see there, GPS, cameras, accelerometers, and all those kind of things too. So some thoughts on the development side of things. Just to summarize that then, we are seeing some benefits of being able to do cross-platform development in JavaScript HTML5 from a speed point of view. Again, we can see the benefit at the upfront development time and cost, but actually it's the maintenance as well. Having to do that in one place is pretty compelling. The other area I wanted to home in for a little while is on integration. Again, from a mobile app point of view, we see that there's some real value from actually accessing proper data in a secure manner from the enterprise. And mobile applications are becoming increasingly functional and transactional, and this is a key part of that. In terms of the challenges of integration, though, I guess there's a few facets. We're talking about speed in this presentation here, and obviously the mobile applications in themselves are things that are developed and iterated in terms of adding features very, very quickly. And that's been, should we say, in contrast to how we're running our enterprise systems, so whether that's databases, even enterprise service buses. The speed of change of those is a lot slower, and we want to have a more rigorous life cycle in terms of updating those and managing those and governance. So we see a kind of mismatch in terms of the speed of change. How can we consume data quickly on the mobile device when the systems at the back end are not changing so quickly? On the flip side, we've got the security of our crown jewels within the data center as well. So how are we protecting those? And there's something of a mismatch there as well. So we want to have a very fine-grained control of the data that goes out through into the mobile applications. And moving to the layer above that, from the point of view of the developer, they don't want to have to deal with the connectivity issues. Am I online? Am I on Wi-Fi? Am I on 3G? So the whole question of connectivity, where is my data coming from? They just want to be able to consume it, and they want to consume it in a data format they can use straight away, which is typically JSON on the mobile device. And then you've got questions such as optimization. Is the data coming across in a manner that we're ready to consume it? Is it coming down as megabytes and we just need a few K of that, or is it optimized? Is it optimized in terms of the number of calls and all those kind of things? So maybe the enterprise services maybe would have 3 or 4 to satisfy a single request from a mobile device. Are we going to call that 3 or 4 times, or can we optimize that in some way? So one of the answers from the Wherelite point of view is the Wherelite Server, and that would sit in the middle. It would provide that integration layer, and just to provide a kind of feel for what that is, it's quite a lightweight adapter. It's written in JavaScript, and it's something that the mobile app developers can go and develop and deploy. It's the same skill set. They'd have access to go and deploy that, and it provides an answer to a number of those questions we were looking at. We can go and mash up data from the enterprise services. So whether that's optimizing the number of requests, we can go and call 3 or 4 enterprise services. Whether that's filtering the data there, we can go and do that. But it's very, very simple to go and do that and then pull data in over REST, over HTTP, over XML, whether you want to go to JMS or a database. We can pull that in very, very simply in JavaScript in the Wherelite Server. And so that's something that kind of helps the mobile application developer and the speed they need to develop their capability, how they can access the data very, very quickly. So we can do our application-specific content through there. We can offload processing if we need to, and caching at the Wherelite Server. And then there's the push notifications as well, so we've got engagement through that channel too. So if there's some event driven in the enterprise, we can go and communicate that out to our end users, again, regardless of the technology they're using. And finally, the third layer underpinning of all of that is enforcing security, which is very, very key. So we've got a single point there where we can manage user authentication and authorization. Are they allowed to access that data? But we can do a few checks behind the scenes just to beef up the security. We know about the application that's out there. So as Wherelite, is the request coming in from a valid Wherelite application? And thirdly is the device. We can even understand, okay, is this device one that we already know and we trust, so we can use user, application and device level authentication there, and indeed add in some custom if we want to. But the principle there is we've got an enforcement point that's checking that for us before we're allowing access to our data. So again, being able to centralize that control and move it into a platform just releases the developers from having to do that, having to maintain that code, and again, just the level of checking and scanning that needs to go on there as well. Which leads us nicely on into testing, and I've grouped that together with scanning and certification as well. From a testing point of view, we talked briefly about some of the manual testing that we have in the browser simulator where you can check the functionality is working. One of the things we found helpful then as well is the ability to do automated functional testing. So a tool that's provided with the WhereLife Studio is the mobile test workbench, and it allows you to run through your application. This is currently on Android and iOS, and again, both native or hybrid. We can run through the application, recording the steps needed to execute our test. And having done that, we can insert verification points to check that the data coming back is what we're expecting. So we have a simple way then of running through a functional test of our application. Once we've recorded that, we can tailor it, we can use data pools and things, but we can run those tests back as and when we need to. And those can be on actual devices or on emulators as well. So again, just a key point, again, I'm in the context of trying to speed up my development lifecycle. we're looking at what we can automate in terms of our testing. And historically, that's been quite tricky with mobile because it does change so much. So the functional test tools here are great when we've maybe got a use case that that has matured. We can nail that down, and it is flexible to some change in the user interface and things like that too. So moving on with the testing, I mentioned 2 extra components on top of the Wherelite platform. And again, depending on which industry you're in, this is proven to be really rather important. The ability to scan an application before it goes out through the door. And again, this is part of an automated, probably an automated continuous integration build. And we can go and detect those vulnerabilities. It sits inside the IDE in Eclipse, so part of WhereLife Studio, for example, and then we'd literally be going and checking the code against a set of rules which will be updated and maintained regularly. So we're catching the top vulnerabilities that would allow things like SQL injection attacks and things like that through. So to be able to add that in and automate that as part of the build, very, very powerful. If we move on to the next one. Something actually slightly different is Wherelite Quality Assurance. We're doing this as cloud-based at the moment, and it covers a number of factors. And when I talked about mobile application testing, I did say it is actually fairly hard to completely automate this. And Wherelite Quality Assurance is one of the things that acknowledges that. It actually allows you to have real applications that goes out into the real out into the field and maybe have access through a test community of users, and we're able to correlate then their feedback. This is probably best expressed for a demonstration, which I don't have available just now, but we would have the application in our hands on our devices. It's got a nice little feature where if we shake the device, it will pop up a little feedback section where we can circle the problem area, maybe an image isn't loading or it's taking too long to get data, and provide some actual feedback, a comment as to what's going on there. The nice thing about that is we've in essence caught the problem in production, and Mobile Quality Assurance will send that information along with the current status of the application back to the cloud service where the developer can actually use that, and we can actually feed that back into our quality lifecycle as well in terms of bug reporting and things like that. I'll probably pause there finally just to say that we will be doing sentiment analysis on that as well. So we're going through the various app stores, looking for keywords and rating the application in a series of different areas such as user experience and security and so forth as well. So we can get a feel for how the application is performing against industry averages. So again, that was test and scanning and certifying. And again, as part of speeding up our development lifecycle, we're looking to automate what we can, have that as part of our integration, continuous integration and our builds. And again, that leads us nicely on to deployment. So being able to take our applications rapidly through the development lifecycle and then get them out into the field. So how do we do that? So let me talk about some of the artifacts that come out of a Wherelite deployment. You can see in the heart of it there in the middle with the WhereLife Studio, and that's where we'll develop the mobile applications obviously, but that's also where we develop the adapters that sit server-side. And the artifacts that come out of that are 3, which are shown on there. There's the application itself, which will go to the mobile device. That's a binary that will be compiled by Android SDK or iOS SDK and so forth, and actually go out towards the mobile devices. And that can go through the public app stores or indeed the Wherelite Application Center as well. To the server side, the Wherelite Server, that is the place that will run the adapters, the JavaScript adapters to provide the integration. But we will also deploy the Wherelite application out there as well, and I'll explain why shortly. But that allows us to do the management of the application as well. So when I said, for example, one of the security checks was checking is it a valid Wherelite application, well, this is how it knows. We've uploaded that artifact to the Wherelite server too. So we can get a feel for how we're sitting in a mobile continuous delivery process as part of that. Summarize that there with the picture. We've talked a bit about development. We're talking about how we are now starting to flesh out a continuous integration build based on a source code management system such as Rational Team Concert. So we'll talk about the build just now and then move on to the deployment and give an example through the urban code technology as well before we get to the mobile device. So at a high level, the mobile development process is develop the application, obviously, but deliver those changes to the source code management system, and that'll be triggering a build of the application, and then we're able to deploy those. So let's go into the build just slightly more detail. Again, from a Wherelite point of view, you'd want something similar with another technology, but Wherelite provides an automated build system. So we've gone through the journey, and you see the steps on the slide there of creating the Wherelite project and application in Eclipse. So we've gone and done our development. The important thing this is doing though is producing the builds of the specific target environments that we want to address. So point 2 there says to add a mobile environment of your choosing, so iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and so forth. We go and do our development. But what we're able to do, and we're doing this with a number of customers and indeed within IBM, is that having made code changes and development, when we check our code in, we can trigger an automated build of that, and the Wherelite build system will take that code and it'll integrate with the Apple SDK, the Android SDK, and so forth, and actually produce applications as part of an automated build there. And you can actually see to the right there's the Wherelite Application Center, which gets into some of the deployment as well. But we can have, as part of our automated build, the applications actually uploaded to an application center as well. And so immediately accessible via our test community. They could have access to the latest builds and all that kind of good stuff as well. Go to the next slide. Great. So the mobile continuous delivery processes, that was the build. We're looking to automate that as much as possible. And we can now do the same thing with deployment as well. And so the Worklight view on these things does facilitate the whole DevOps piece, where the administrative artifacts that we need to manage a Worklight environment are easily controlled and configured as part of development source code as well. So whether that's setting up security environments and things like that, we can develop all that and maintain all that, and then when we build those, we can target our different deployment environments such as pre-production and the likes. So let's go through that. So again, we've been using a technology called Urban Code that IBM acquired a little while ago, and that allows you to articulate a deployment process, and you can see the example there, again, very simple one, where we'll start our deployment process, which will be pulling the Wherelite artifact out of the Urban Code code station. So that's the output of our build. So we're able to get our hands on the artifacts, and then we can go and deploy the application. And this is why we covered the 3 artifacts earlier that a Wherelite deployment consists of. So we have the client-side binary application, and we have the server-side artifacts, which are the adapters in the Wherelite application as well. So the thing that allows us to do, if I move on to the next slide, is as a result of our automated code check-in and build, we're able to then automate the deployment to test environments. So Urban Code Deploy will allow us to abstract out the process of deploying Wherelite artifacts from the specifics of a given environment, and again, whether that's test, pre-production, and production. So what we're able to produce is a repeatable process that can deploy our Wherelite artifacts. And again, Urban Code Deploy is environment aware. We'll be able to pick up our environment-specific security database settings and so on before we're able to deploy our artifacts. And then we'll be able to integrate our testing as part of that using some of the tools I referred to earlier. And once we've signed off that code, we can ultimately promote it through the lifecycle to release into the public domain as well. Drawing to a close, a couple of extra features I just mentioned from a Wherelite point of view. So the Wherelite Application Center is a great tool for production, but also for testing. I just wanted to cover that too. For production, fairly obviously, we would want something like this for our business to enterprise applications, some way for distributing those within the enterprise. Within IBM, we use the Worklight Application Center for our internal applications, but an area that we've also used it quite heavily as part of our development and our proof of concepts as well, where we're able to do our development of the applications and have a demo app store, which allow people to access early drops of the code or mature pilots, proofs of certain features, and so forth. In terms of how that works is that you will have an Application Center client on your device that will be provided via a link from an email or similar, or maybe through your MDM solutions we would do within IBM. And then that provides a fairly typical App Store type user experience where you're able to go and look at the applications available and then be able to rate them and provide feedback and things like that. But that provides a nice way of providing some access control and also distribution mechanism for your applications. The final area that I was going to talk about in terms of distribution of the applications is a specific feature of Wherelite. And again, it kind of homes in on a number of things we wanted to do from a Wherelite point of view, which is managing the applications even when they're out there. And as we've been talking about speeding up our development lifecycle, getting our code out there, direct update is quite a neat feature. It allows us to directly update the code of an application that is already on a mobile device. So the scenario that we have depicted in front of us here is that a user will go and access an application from an app store. Once they've got it on their device, you'll see a native shell and the hybrid resources, HTML5, JavaScript, and all those kind of things, they are all held locally on the application. So the HTML5 provides your application functionality. What we're doing when we fire up the application for the first time or subsequent times, it will actually go and check with the Wherelite server to see if it is up to date. And you'll remember that we deploy the Wherelite application code to the Wherelite server as well as part of our deployment. And so if we want to force an update of an application, we can just upload it onto the Wherelite server. The next time an end user comes in and tries out the application, they will be prompted for an update. You can see the screenshot there on the left. Update is available. They can go and pull that down, and their application is actually up to date. And the nice thing about that is that is it can be a mandatory process. So if there were a security issue or something like that, we can actually force that update straight away, and we don't need to have the App Store as part of that process. So again, as part of the aggressive timescales we're looking to with DevOps, that can help that kind of thing. And again, particularly with bug fixes and maybe security issues as well. Great. So that's quite a concise walkthrough. We focused on a few different areas that help us speed up our development of mobile applications in the world of DevOps. Looking at the design and development area, I guess looking at some of the benefits of using a common language, a common approach that would work cross-platform. HTML5, JavaScript, those technologies really are maturing and providing a strong baseline to go do that. And I guess from a Wherelite point of view, we're acknowledging that there is still the occasional need to dip into some native and you have that flexibility where you need it. Integration is key. We've touched on that, whether that's being able to optimize the traffic from enterprise services, whether it's securing it, whether it's being able to do some server-side coding, and again, to be able to manage that in the speed that the mobile application is being updated is pretty important as well. So that's all available using the concept of the Wherelite Server. And then we went through testing as well, and testing is obviously a key thing. We're basically looking at what we can automate as part of our continuous integration builds as well. And then finally into deployment and being able to automate those kind of things with Urban Code Deploy. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions, Helena. Come back to you.
Fabulous. Thanks, Jonathan. That was excellent. We do have a few questions, actually. Let me run through them. First of all, we have, how useful is Worklight if I just have one big legacy application I need to make available to mobile?
Okay, do we know, is the legacy application a mobile application or is it some server-side application?
A server-side application.
Okay. We've had a mixture of experiences with that. I did comment in the design and development aspect that certainly desktop applications don't necessarily scale down to mobile devices. That's from the perspective of a user experience. So that may or may not work as to whether you can simplify the user experience enough to work on a smaller form factor. Where it can be useful is if we have services that we can make the most of, and we can go and pull on those and incorporate those into our mobile applications, then that can be very, very useful. And then the final thing that I was going to add on top of that, I know this doesn't quite apply here, but people have been asking about starting with existing native applications and can they go this direction as well? And the answer to that is yes, and that's been quite important for people as well, being able to start with a native app, start benefiting from some of the integration and the testing, and maybe migrate the application towards a more cross-platform feel if they need to as well.
Okay. Second one, we saw that Worklight integrates into SCM, RTC, and a Jazz build engine. Does it integrate into any other build and SCM engines?
Yes, it does. Again, this is the benefits of open standards. So because we've run on Eclipse, it is the usual suspects. I guess our experience is all through Jazz and Rational Team Concert, but yes, whatever Eclipse would support, we would fit in with that.
Okay. And then finally, you said that you're keeping up with the proliferation of devices, OS updates and stores. How do you do this? As a user of Worklight, how often would I receive updates and how would I receive them?
Okay, in a couple of different ways then. So the first one is just the speed of which the mobile vendors have been releasing new operating system versions for starters, so iOS 7.1 and so forth. We've got a good track record actually. We acquired Worklight in 2012, and every time a major release of an operating system has come out for those target environments, we've been able to test our platform and release any fixes if appropriate, if needed, to the market before those platforms become GA. So you'd be able to access typically an iFix to patch Worklight so that it works. I mean, we've had some breaking changes over the last 2 years with iOS and Android, which we've been able to test and patch before they've gone to market. So it gives you a heads up before then. In terms of other technologies, things like Firefox OS, I think, is of particular interest to me. We're obviously keeping an eye on those, and those would be probably part of the release of a major release of Wherelite, which we're doing twice a year at the moment. So again, those are from taking feedback from customers and just keeping an eye on the marketplace. But that would be every 6 months or so you'd be able to take on the latest one of those if we chose to support those.
Fabulous. So that was the last question. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. In particular, Jonathan, thank you for an excellent presentation. We will be sending out this to everybody that's been on the call today. Thank you, Jonathan.
Great, thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.